Hi everyone! Today we're going to be talking about a heart-healthy diet and how we can fit cocoa and chocolate into that. And I know cocoa and chocolate are typically thought of as being unhealthy, they're in really indulgent foods that aren't good for us, but research has actually shown that people who eat more chocolate on a daily basis have lower risk for heart disease. And for people who have a risk factor like high cholesterol or dyslipidemia, we can actually lower those effects with adding 45 to 100 grams of cocoa in our diet per week. So that's really good news. But what we want to do is we don't want to include all the bad stuff that comes with typical chocolate desserts like butter and eggs that contain cholesterol and saturated fats that are going to just worsen our cardiovascular disease. So what are we going to make? We are going to make sweet potato brownies. I know this sounds really strange, but these are just as delicious and fudgy and moist as regular delicious brownies. They're super chocolatey. And the reason that we have the sweet potato in the mix is because we're not using the butter and cholesterol, so we need something moist to kind of bind everything together. And we are adding some soluble fiber, and we know that soluble fiber is really beneficial for cholesterol. So cocoa plus the soluble fiber into one brownie makes it super delicious. And these are going to give you about 18 grams of chocolate per serving, so that means that 3 a week for dessert covers your bases for getting that 45 to 100 grams of chocolate. And we're also going to use peanut butter and avocado oil, which also have unsaturated fats, which are really good for your cardiovascular system as well. So without further ado, we're going to be baking this delicious treat that you can use as a dessert, you can use as a yogurt topping, you can use to bring to a party or anything. So let's get started. Alright, so to get started, I have done the basics. I set my oven to 350 degrees. I took a paper towel in my oil and I have greased my pan like so. You can also just use regular pan that you use for normal baking or cooking spray. I have also put in 2 of the dry ingredients. For this recipe, we're using coconut flour. Coconut flour is a good gluten-free alternative, and it also is going to give a little sweetness to the brownies since we're not putting sugar in it. I have also used Hershey's 100% cacao, like cocoa powder, and the 100% cacao is going to give you more benefits from the cocoa for your cholesterol. So we used a 1/4 cup of the coconut powder. We used 3/4 of a cup for the cocoa powder. And next we're going to do the sweet potato. You're going to want to start off boiling and mashing your sweet potatoes first. It takes about 15 minutes and you just chop them up into little cubes. I used a large sweet potato and this gave me 2 servings, so I can make 2 batches from 1 sweet potato. So I saved the rest from my last batch. This is 3/4 of a cup, boiled and mashed. So we're gonna plop that in. And you don't wanna add salt or butter or anything like you do with regular mashed potatoes. All right. Next we're going to put in our avocado oil. You can also use coconut oil. It is 1/4 of a cup's worth. But coconut oil doesn't have all the good unsaturated fatty acids that we need to protect our cardiovascular system. And we're also going to be using peanut butter, another 1/4 cup. And you can use whatever nut butter you prefer. I really like peanut butter, but almond butter, cashew butter, mixed nut butter, they're all gonna give you the same effect. It's gonna make a moist, fudgy brownie that we all love. You can even save some extra and drizzle it on top at the end if you're feeling really indulgent. And the peanut butter or any nut butter is going to give you more protein and more unsaturated fats like we need from the oils. We are also using maple syrup instead of the inflammatory white sugars that you find in normal baking. And this is also a 1/4 of a cup. So we're just gonna pour that in. And we have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and we are going to need 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Easy peasy. All right. we're going to hold off on the chocolate chips for now and just mix all the ingredients, all the other ingredients. And soon they're gonna look just like real brownies, and you won't even notice that there's sweet potato in them. But the finer you get your sweet potato to be mashed, the more moist and the easier it's gonna blend in. So now that it is pretty well mixed, we're just gonna let this sit for about 5 minutes because the coconut flour needs to absorb all the wet ingredients. So we'll just let it sit and you can just hang out for 5 minutes. All right, so we waited 5 minutes and now it's time to add the chocolate chips. We're gonna use a half a cup, and if you so please, you can add some extra as some topping in the end. I saved a little bit to put on top. So we just fold these in nice and quick. So because we're using cocoa powder and the dark chocolate chips, you want to use dark chocolate to minimize the extra sugars, and you want like more of the cocoa benefits. So we're using dark chocolate chips and the 100% cacao powder. Each brownie, if you cut this up into 9 small pieces or large pieces, you're gonna have about 18 grams of chocolate. And we need about 45 to 100 grams of chocolate per week to see the benefits on our blood lipid levels. So if you just have 3 of these a week, you get 55 grams of chocolate, which is more than enough. So you can treat yourself 3 times a week to a nice healthy fudgy brownie. Yeah, all right. So you're gonna wanna use a rubber spatula or a wooden spoon and just make sure that the batter's pressed in evenly. These are gonna feel a little different than regular brownies because we're not using butter, we're not using canola oil, we're not using regular flour, so everything's gonna have a little bit different consistency, but they should come out and taste really chocolatey, really moist and fudgy, and delicious. All right. So I have pressed it all into my greased pan, and I have some extra chocolate chips. I'll just sprinkle, nice little topping, and it's ready to go in the oven. We're gonna do it for 30 to 35 minutes. So I set my timer for 30, check on it, and add time if it needs more. So we have taken our brownies out of the oven. It's been 30 minutes on the dot. They're looking and smelling delicious. And you can see that I have an 8x8 pan here. So we're gonna cut these like a tic-tac-toe board to get 9 pretty decent sized brownies. But we're gonna hold off on that for now because the coconut flour and the sweet potato doesn't set like a normal brownie. So we're gonna have to let it set. If you wait 1 to 2 hours, they're gonna get a really fudgy consistency. And the longer you wait, the easier it'll be to cut. So you can make these before dinner and then go eat your dinner, come back for dessert, or you can cut them up and pop them in the freezer and save them for later, pop them in the microwave. Otherwise, they should be good for about a week. And each piece, if you cut it into 9 equal pieces, should give you 5 grams of protein from the peanut butter, and you're going to get 6 grams of fiber, which is not something that you get in a normal brownie. So we're gonna have that wonderful soluble fiber from the sweet potatoes. We also have 18 grams of chocolate per serving. So if you have about 3 to 5 of these per week, you're gonna get between the 45 and 100 gram range that is recommended as a benefit for cardiovascular disease and for lowering your blood cholesterol. So these are super delicious. I can cut these up and put them on top of ice cream. I can put them on yogurt for breakfast. You can add nuts on top. You can add M&Ms or other candies if you like. That peanut butter drizzle that we talked about earlier, or nut butter. You can get really creative with these. You can save them in the freezer for a really long time, and they're absolutely delicious. So enjoy.